You're listening to the When Life Hands You Lemons podcast.
But in an entry-level film production, it's one strike and you're out. You're fired. I'm not calling you back.
If your goal today is to make a basket, we're going to make that basket.
The minute you create something, as soon as it's made tangible, you have a copyright in it.
How do I get our guys to sound that big, that full when they do the harmonies?
And I'm your host, Lennon Seahawk. Let's get to the show.
Well, my name is Anthony Citrinite. I go by Ant C, and I've been playing the drums for over 30 years. I've been in a lot of popular bands. I took drum lessons as a kid and just, was always drawn to music. I have, my father's been in the entertainment business for a long time, so that sort of helped draw me in. Always loved music, and now I'm creating, I've created a platform that allows musicians as well as people in other areas of interest. They offer their one-on-one time to people through video calls through my app called Meethook. And I'm excited to explain more about that, and just, happy to meet you.
Yeah, same. So thanks for being on the show as well. I'm glad to have you on as well, because you sound like you've got quite a bit of industry experience and you've got so much to offer. So this is really exciting. So you said you've always had a passion for music, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and what kind of music did you kind of grow up listening to? Did your parents have kind of a diverse listening?
Well, my dad is a booking agent, so I would always be tagging along with him to every, whether he liked it or not, he booked and promoted a lot of different bands. And so I got exposed to all of them. And, it was everything you can think of, from like they would be considered oldies acts now, but we're talking like early 80s. I was born in 75, so probably around 6 or 7 is when I started tagging along with him, and I just got exposed to everything, everything that was happening around those times. All the different bands. I remember going to big festivals where there were like 20 or 30 bands, and I felt like, wow, I get to watch it from the backstage, and I really felt at a young age that I just felt the amazing energy that music had, and how happy I felt listening to it, and really that's just where it all started, kind of.
And do you remember like a particular moment that you were kind of tagging along with your dad that you really kind of remember, whether it be like a band or an artist interaction, or just a particular rough patch that he had that he kind of worked through? Is there anything that kind of stands out that kind of made you even more interested in music?
I guess, observing these live shows from a different perspective from the back that most people watch it from the front. I guess the way that musicians sort of made a living, and their lifestyle, and just sort of their interactions backstage and stuff like that was really, it wasn't any one in particular. It was just really being able to observe how musicians worked, and what went into every show. So it's not just music, but just the entire, just entertainment as a whole. I've always been drawn to it just because I think I got that perspective that was different than most of my friends, at an early age, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. Because for me, whenever I went to a show, I would always be interested, I always knew and was interested in kind of what happened behind the scenes. Now, I didn't know in depth because I hadn't worked in the scene at that point, but I had a pretty basic understanding of how the show got there. There's a lot of moving parts to get this band or artist to perform at a certain venue or a festival or whatever it was. So what are some things that you learned or that you really enjoyed from, you're going to a show and you're enjoying it versus kind of working it and seeing the back end of it?
Well, I guess, I started forming this idea in the back of my mind at an early age that that's what I wanted to do. And so I was always drawn to the drums. So I would always pay attention. I would always try to either get my dad to introduce me to him, at going to all these things as a kid, but then getting older and being able to go out myself, I would always try to meet the drummer and just have a quick conversation. It was always really about me learning and sort of getting into their head a little bit about how they're able to do this for a living, because that was just always my dream to be able to play music and travel and share music with people all over the world. And so I learned a lot from many different drummers, every single one of them that I had the opportunity to talk to and pick their brain a little bit, backstage or wherever we happen to, drum clinics and stuff. I always found a huge value in that, and I felt really lucky that I was able to do it.
Absolutely. And when you think back and you kind of think like all of these connections that your dad has and that now you have because you were fortunate enough to kind of travel with him and really learn the back end and network with a lot of these professionals. And that's super, super important in the entertainment industry. So how have those connections that you made, whether they were traveling with your dad or even after the fact that you've made today, how have those kind of networking connections and things like that translated into what you're doing today? And how important is that for like an industry professional, an aspiring industry professional, whether they want to be a drummer, guitarist, singer, whatever, kind of network and meet these people?
Right. Well, I think that, if you took all of these experiences and opportunities that I've had and you put them all together, I think that's sort of what's allowed me to sort of do what I've done since. And the one big thing that stands out throughout all the years of meeting musicians, hanging around musicians, talking to musicians, I realized that it's a tough business, and there's something that always makes me think is the fact that this is art. We do this to be happy. Like we a lot of us feel like it chose us. We didn't really choose it. So to play music is such an important thing and very pleasurable in a lot of ways. And so there's this other side that's the business, and so it's a tough thing to sort of balance those two out to where you're able to sort of do your art, so to speak, the way you want to do it, but at the same time, there's a money aspect that might have sort of put you in a box to a certain extent, if that makes any sense. So I feel like that there's always that balance. And so my thought process has always been, if there was a way for all of us musicians and professionals, anybody who's passionate about anything, if there was a way for us to sort of know that our bills were paid and the food is going to be on the table, how would we use our art? And I really strive for a day to when money doesn't come into the equation and you can really just focus on what you're passionate about. I believe the entire world could be so better if everyone just sort of spent their time on what they were passionate about and money didn't get in the way. And I feel like, out of everything that I've learned, seeing how musicians sort of, most of them are just getting by, there's some lucky ones, the top 1 or 2%, but the rest, we're always trying to continue to be true to ourselves, but at the same time, we need to make some extra money in order to make this all work, especially when music is practically free at this point for everyone through all these different music channels. The times have changed, and the music business needs a new revolution, and it's great in many ways because you get access to all the tools that anyone else has at this point, and the internet makes it very easy in many ways, but also you are a smaller fish in a bigger pond, so to speak. So I don't know if I'm making any sense, but I'm just sort of, helping you understand a little bit about, the things I think about and the impression I got from taking all the meetings I've had with all these musicians over many years. It really boils down to that.
No, I mean, it made complete sense because I too agree that I think the world would be a much better place if we had all these people that have so many different passions and they could elaborate on them and practice them and do them on a day-to-day basis. But it's unfortunate that they're not able to do that because they have a 9-to-5 job, or they have, families, of course, are very important, but they have other priorities that are taking them away from those hobbies, and then they have bills to pay and things like that. So I've seen it time and time again, and I'm sure you've seen it as well, where you have many musicians that go into it and they want to do this, and that, but it's unfortunate because they're like, I needed a more stable life, I needed a more steady paycheck, so now I have a 9-to-5 job, and I have a family, and I just do it when I can. And that kind of breaks my heart because that was something they were so passionate about at one point, and now it's just kind of pushed to the wayside so they could focus on their other priorities. So I really like that, what you said on how other people and how the world would be a better place if we didn't have to focus on money so much.
Yeah, it really seems to be, I've heard so many of those stories, like you just said, and it's a waste. It's a waste of talent, and it's all of us. Imagine if your favorite band could no longer afford to continue making the music that you love, and all of a sudden, there's just all you can do is listen to, the music that they've already created. You'll never be able to see or hear anything new. It's a sad state that's happening every day because it's harder and harder in today's industry, in today's world, to make a living with music. So I feel like this app that I created could potentially help, and the hardest thing is to sort of spread the word about something, especially with all the noise out there. There's a new app you hear about every day, and it's tough to get people to change their ways, especially guys been doing it 20, 30, 40 years. Changing the game, you gotta sort of roll with the punches, and sometimes that requires, keeping an open mind. And a lot of us, as we get older and, we get set in our ways and it becomes difficult. So, I'm here trying to spread the word to all those musicians out there that are finding it tough. They have fans, they have a purpose, they feel like they're really, getting their art out there and people dig it. There's another way that they could bring some bread in, and, it's the app that I created called Meethook. It's, you can use, a lot of bands are using it for meet and greets, so basically the concept is that it's a one-on-one video call that it's a paid video call. So you pay for it, plenty of people have done Skype or FaceTime. It's similar to those platforms, but it's all built into the app, and the artist or band could set up a profile and basically offer a certain amount of minutes for a certain amount of money. Everyone has their price per minute on the app, and fans or someone who wants to learn from them, we have a lot of drummers teaching lessons on there. A lot of people can get advice. So, like that little kid in me who was, backstage trying to find a way for someone to introduce me to the drummer. Now you don't need a friend who's got a backstage pass or somebody who is, knows somebody who knows somebody, or your cousin's brother's uncle who's got an extra ticket and pass to get you backstage. It's just a new way that you can connect and you can have that conversation that might change your path. It might change your mind on something. You can get some questions answered. You might learn a new technique. It's really open to what you want to do with it and what the host is offering. But it all came from that vision of just trying to find a way for all these musicians that have fans who have people who sort of would love the opportunity to talk with them, and find a way for them to make extra money by also offering that time to a fan, or, someone who might want to learn from them, or just, even just meeting them, for 5 minutes.
I think that is so cool because I mean, there's very few people that I would really want to sit down and pick their brain, because I think today's music industry and professionals are becoming very saturated. Everybody's kind of doing the same thing. But now that you've got people, industry professionals like yourself, who've been doing it for so many years, and they're trying to give back and teach them what they've seen over the years, and just meeting them and how they've kind of changed the industry. I think that would be so cool, and I think we could learn from those veterans. And it's like today, everybody's doing the same thing. Like, you can sit down and you can talk to, the producers or whoever, artists that are 16 years old all the way up to maybe 25, 30, and they're all kind of doing a similar thing. Their music kind of sounds the same. Their production style is very similar. So it's very saturated, unfortunately, and I think the creativity and the live instrumentation isn't as lively, I guess you could say, as it used to be. And I think, with the app that you had created, I think that's so cool to be able to sit down and literally have a one-on-one conversation with them and connect with them and really pick their brain and learn from them, and how to kind of stand out amongst the saturation.
Yeah, I mean, I watched plenty of videos on YouTube and Instagram, and, a lot of things catch my eye. I when something interests me, I tend to want to delve into it and learn as much as I can about it, or maybe it's an artist that I want to delve into. It's everyone has a different way to sort of understand or sort of consume music and information. So, when you listen to these podcasts or you watch a video that someone's posted up on one of these sites, you're going to get a lot of good information. And if you're passionate and interested in what they're saying, then you can get a lot out of that video. What I would like, Meethook to become as we grow, is, sort of like the next step. You watch a video, you get a lot of questions answered. Those questions now are answered, but new questions have arose. And now, because you're passionate about it in your own way, and you want to sort of delve into a certain part that might not be as general as, the subjects they were bringing up in the video, this is a way for you to sort of zero in and instead of having to find this person and ask them to go out for a cup of coffee so you could pick their brain. Now, you can help them out and they can help you out. It's sort of like a win-win. We also, I don't want to forget to mention that, some of our hosts actually use the app to raise money for charity too. So if you're a host, you're someone on the app that is offering their time per minute to speak to someone about whatever they're passionate about, you can choose a percentage of what you're going to earn, and that could go to a specific charity. We have 26 partner charities so far on Meethook. And, we got people like Bootsy Collins, funk icon. We got a guitar player who played with Kiss for over 12 years, Bruce Kulick. Tons of my favorite drummers. I'm a drummer, so the first thing I did was contacted everyone I knew that played drums and told them to get on here and use it. And so they're basically popular, and a bunch of popular and famous drummers are like our early adopters at this point. But, it's growing every day, and we have an entertainment category, or sports category, and a business category as well. So we're sort of branching out a little bit. I feel like the more musicians that use it, it will spread the word towards these other industries. And, there's a lot of musicians who also overlap in a lot of other parts of the entertainment business, or some of them even act. Some of them are even involved with sports. So I think there's a lot of overlap there. And at the end of the day, I just wanted to create a platform where people can easily get the information they need from the source. And, I feel like it's slowly, starting a new revolution so that people can go out there and focus only on what they're passionate about, and then they can supplement their income and make some extra bread on the side, offering, an hour here, an hour there on Meethook to share what they're passionate about with other people, so that they can, raise the entire ship and help people with what they're passionate about.
You talked about there's all kinds of different people on there. You've got drummers, you've got singers, you've got people involved in sports, you've got all kinds of different people involved and on the platform. So I think, and I'm sure you can agree and maybe speak more on this, that the music industry is so diverse, and especially today, music is literally everywhere you go. You hear music at the grocery store, you hear music at the gas station, you hear music on TV, in podcasts, you hear it everywhere you go. So I have always been one to try to branch out and not be involved in just one thing. Like, for example, if you want to be, let's say, a recording engineer, or you want to be a singer-songwriter, and you're only focusing on being a singer-songwriter, or you're only focusing on being a recording engineer or a mastering engineer or whatever it may be, there's so many other things out there that you could be doing as well to continue to learn and even open up doors for other opportunities. So can you elaborate a little bit on that topic and how, like, branching out and not just focusing on what you want to do and kind of branching out and seeing what else the music industry has to offer?
Oh, absolutely. So perfect way to explain some of that is to talk about how my life went. I'm a professional drummer. I played with a lot of, at least a few bands that you've probably heard of. I played with legendary rock group Boston. I played with a band called the SmashUp. We toured for about a year and a half, Warped Tour and things like that. Anyways, the point is that I always was on this path of playing music for a living. And early on, when I was 18 years old, I moved to the big city. I moved from upstate New York to New York City, and I went to study at a school called the Drummers Collective. It was a drum school that offered to help people get from where they were to professional. And I wanted to take that extra step, and I felt like, let me just get into a big city and start playing and learning from the pros. And that way I can probably use that to network my way into other, situations. So on that path, I realized that I always loved business as well. And while I was in my early days at that school, I would run errands for the director at the time. And I would always suggest things. I've always had this entrepreneurial mind. So I would always say, hey, have you ever thought about doing this? Hey, have you ever thought about doing that? I've always been passionate about a lot of things. And when I think of something, I usually speak up and try to help the people around me. So 18 years old, being a student at this school, I went to the director's office and started recommending ideas. And that led me to start working at the school. And believe it or not, I'm still there. It's been 25 years. And it's allowed me to do everything that I have done professionally on the drums, because the school has been my other passionate, my other passion that allows me the paycheck so that I can pursue what I want to pursue in music without having to worry about the money. So I think that, what I did is something that I recommend to everyone, and that is to, follow your passions and don't close your ears to everything else, because you may find you have other passions. And so once you find you have other passions, absolutely you should learn as much as you can about them, especially if you're passionate about it. Why not? It's just, it just feeds your passion. I'm going to find another word because I've been saying passionate a lot, but the point is, whatever moves you, if you find that you have skills in a certain area and you find it fun. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, we're supposed to be finding something we love to do and then trying to figure out how we can get paid to do it. So I think that it never hurts to sort of pay attention to things that you're good at, things that you have fun doing, because those things could be turned into, something that allows you the money or the time to do what you love. And if you love doing those as well, all the better.
100%. And I always live by the quote, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And I think that's so important. And I think I've heard it time and time again where these people are working their maybe it's a 9 to 5, or maybe they're doing music and they love their job. It doesn't even feel like work to them. So aside from that, and like being a musician and being in the entertainment industry, what are some other forms of income in addition to like doing stuff like Meethook that an artist or a musician can get involved with to maybe make a little bit of extra income? And of course there's royalties and performing and things like that, but there's all kinds of other stuff that a musician and artist could do to make some extra money.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's really important. So starting with education, I think that would be a great place to start. You know, if anyone is really good at anything within their instrument or their genre, I think there's a lot of different ways you can use the skills that you've already learned. And, even though you could do that on Meethook, worldwide, aside from Meethook, you can do that in your local area, and you could really help some people, and you could really sort of open their minds up to music and to certain techniques that you have learned on your instrument. There's plenty of people out there. There's always somebody who's looking to pick up a new instrument. And I think, number one, there's a lot of opportunities for someone just solo or, connecting with other like-minded people that have either a school or a small group of teachers. I've heard of that happening many times. People get together and they put together a quote-unquote school, but basically it's just a bunch of people traveling to different people's homes and teaching them piano, guitar, or drums. Also, if you play one instrument and you want to learn another because you're passionate about that, maybe once you learn the basics of that other instrument, I've had friends that, drummer friends that learned the basics of guitar, and now they could go teach guitar to someone who's just picking it up for the first time and sort of get them to the next step, and then refer them to the person who taught them. So I think that education and lessons and teaching and mentoring, all of those are naturals for people in the music industry, because we all have specific skills that have allowed us to do what we do. So you could start there and sort of branch out from there. And if you can't really figure it out, the best thing to do, going with the quote that you mentioned, is just figure out what the next thing on your list is that you're passionate about, and just start learning as much about that. Just sort of head in that direction, because what I have always found is that if you head in the if you don't really have all the answers yet, but you have a general idea of the area you might want to go into, just start walking in that direction. It will pop its head out. It definitely will. It has for me my whole life. You just sort of got to be looking forward and use that as a process. Just, you might have to delve into 16 different things before you find the one that you really dig. At the end of the day, the worst that could happen is you learn a little bit more about those 16 things. It's not a bad thing at all.
Absolutely. And I know that that's happened to me as well. I've dived in and I thought that I wanted to try this and it didn't work out. And I finally have found, even with the podcast, there's a lot of things that I've tried and it just hasn't worked. So I go back and try again. And then I find something that works, and you just kind of keep keep trying and don't give up, because going back to what we talked about earlier in the show, we see so many people that just start doing their thing and they come to a crossroads and they kind of just throw in the towel and they just give up. And that's why so many people are just kind of working their 9 to 5s. And then it's even why some of the most successful musicians and even people like yourself who have, worked so hard and they've kind of came through those difficult times and they've transpired through them. So it's very inspiring to hear that and see that, and you just can't give up. You always got to keep going, especially in this industry.
Yes, that's one of my buddy's favorite quotes. He always sees Mike Stern, famous jazz guitarist Mike Stern, and he says always the first thing Mike Stern says to me is you just gotta keep going, man. Because that's what sets you apart from the rest. There's a lot of people who, when times get tough or it becomes harder to pay your bills or whatever it may be, if there's an obstacle in front of you, it's very easy to give up. The important thing is to follow your heart. And if you really want to do that, you just have to keep going, because life has its way of rewarding you, for sure.
It most certainly does. And I'm sure that this stuff has happened to you throughout your career, and life has continued to reward you with wonderful things. So that pretty much concludes all the questions that I have. Is there anything else you wanted to add, or any more else that you wanted to touch about, or that you can provide some more insight on?
Well, I just wanted to congratulate you on having such a great podcast. I really like the topics, and I think it's important for people to hear real conversations about this stuff. There's all sorts of way of going about living your life, but the more passionate you are and the more that you follow your heart and get educated on what you need to know, so that when you do put in that effort, you put the right feet forward at the right times. There is an art to everything that we do and everything that we need to do to make this all work. So just definitely know as much about the history as possible, I think, is important. I also think that speaking to people that have done it before you is very important, and just following your heart and making sure you're true to yourself at the end of the day, and just be happy. And if you realize you're not happy, figure out what it is and get that part out, because life is too short. But thank you for what you do, and I appreciate the time and conversation. Great conversation. And, I wish you the best of luck with the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate that, because I work very hard to do exactly what you just described, is, provide expert conversations with people who have done it, to those who are looking to maybe come back and that have maybe been out for 10 years, 20 years, and maybe learn a little bit more and maybe brush up on something, or maybe somebody who's just looking to get into the entertainment industry, music industry, and what can they do, and they can learn from people who are doing it or have done it. So thank you. That really means a lot to me. And so kind of wrapping everything up, how can everybody keep up with you and follow what you're doing with either your professional career, with Meethook, and even reach out and connect with you if they have any questions about what you had said in the show?
Well, first of all, I'm happy to answer any emails. Anyone can email me at antcee, that's ANTCEE, at meethook.com. Email me if you want, if you got questions about anything that I said. I'm about to release a record with the band I'm playing with at the moment. It's called Embers Only. It's like members only without the M. Embers Only. We're on YouTube. We're on all the normal channels, YouTube, Instagram. Meethook. I think everyone listening to this should continue to listen and go back and listen to all the other episodes, and also sign up for Meethook, because everything that you're learning from all these professionals, you can also find a bunch of other professionals, maybe some of the same ones, and you can talk to them one-on-one and get all the questions that you have answered, so that you can do the best you can do to make the happiest musical life for yourself.
Excellent. Excellent. So thanks again for being on the show, Anthony. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule and contributing to the continued expert conversations that I have for the show. And it's been great, a great conversation. So thanks again.
Well, thanks for having me, Lennon, and I hope to catch up with you again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Anthony, and take care.
All right, you too, man.
Mr. Anthony Citrinite was amazing. I love his input and how his mindset is on the music industry and how it needs a revolution, because he is one of the music industry veterans. He's seen it from 30 years ago, 40 years ago, all the way up to its current state. You know, and his family has been very involved in the entertainment industry. Earlier on their show, he mentioned that his dad was a booking agent. So he witnessed all of his father's work and the artists that were working with his father. And since then, he has also been like a touring drummer, a percussionist, a band member. He's toured with Boston, Coheed and Cambria, the SmashUp. He's worked with Katy Perry and a bunch of other many musicians, far too many to name for the rest of the show here. He's also done a lot of other gigs. He's been on the TV shows. He's been a booking agent, tour manager, producer, songwriter, movie extra, TV extra. And he also mentioned that he was in the Howard Stern movie for a quote-unquote millisecond. He's performed in venues from one person all the way up to 80,000 people. So Anthony has seen it all. And he also has one of his drumsticks on display in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as part of the Warped Tour exhibit. So I think that is super, super cool as well. So I hope that you enjoyed the conversation with Anthony. And as always, I will put his contact information in the show notes below so that you can keep up with him and follow him if there's any questions that you may have for him about what he has said in the show. And furthermore, I'd also encourage you to sign up to my mailing list, which is also in the show notes, which will help me send out new episodes to you when new episodes like this are live. I would also encourage you to sign up to my Patreon account, and that helps me kind of give back to you guys and help the show grow a little bit more financially. There is a guest request form as well in the show notes. So if you or somebody you know would be a good guest for the show, please fill it out and send it over to them, and I will reach out if they are a good guest for the show. Lastly, I would also appreciate a 5-star rating and or review in Apple Podcasts, as it helps this show be discovered by new listeners and build a community around the show. So thanks again for tuning in to this week's episode of When Life Hands You Lemons, and we will see you next week on When Life Hands You Lemons.